Ladies and gentlemen, let us start with a truth that sounds almost too simple, but carries with it the weight of an entire philosophy of living. Discipline must triumph over mood. You see, most people are slaves to their emotional states. They wake up in the morning and check how they feel before deciding whether they should act. They look to their moods for permission to do the very things that would improve their lives. And because moods are fleeting, unstable, and often dictated by external conditions, their lives remain as chaotic and unstable as those moods themselves. Think about it. If you only ever acted when you felt like it, how often would you actually do the things that matter? Very rarely. No one feels like waking up at 5 a.m. No one feels like sitting down and writing when distractions are endless. No one feels like eating clean when sugar and comfort food are calling. And yet, paradoxically, it is precisely in doing what we don't feel like doing that our character is forged. The path to a life of meaning is not paved with temporary feelings. It is built brick by brick with discipline. Discipline is higher than motivation, because motivation is a spark, but discipline is the engine. Motivation is unreliable, it comes and goes like weather. But discipline is the internal law that governs your life regardless of mood, regardless of circumstance. It's the choice to act not because you want to, but because you must. And this is why consistency is the mark of maturity. Children follow impulses, adults build habits. And a disciplined person is someone who has trained themselves to act beyond the sway of emotion. There is a psychological principle here worth noticing. When you repeatedly override your moods in service of a higher goal, you're actually rewiring your nervous system. Every time you choose to do the difficult thing, even when you don't feel like it, you're carving pathways in your brain that say, "This is who I am. I am the kind of person who does what is necessary." And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your identity begins to shift. You no longer identify with weakness, procrastination, or excuses. Instead, you begin to embody strength, reliability, and consistency. And that shift in identity is far more powerful than any burst of motivation. Philosophically, you might think of discipline as the highest form of freedom. That may sound paradoxical because most people equate discipline with restriction, but the opposite is true. The undisciplined man is the one enslaved to his appetites, enslaved to his moods, enslaved to whatever temptation appears in the moment. But the disciplined man has mastery. He is free precisely because he has set himself in order. He can choose deliberately instead of being tossed around by whim. And when you have that kind of freedom, doors open to you that remain forever closed to those who live by impulse. Now, let me put this into practical terms. Imagine you want to become healthier. You don't need a 90-day crash program. What you need is the discipline to show up every single day and move your body, even for 20 minutes, even when you don't feel like it. Imagine you want to build a business. You don't need grand inspiration every morning. You need the discipline to sit down and do the unglamorous work, emails, research, planning, whether or not the mood strikes. Imagine you want deeper relationships. You don't need to wait until you feel the perfect wave of affection. You need the discipline to consistently invest your attention, to listen, to speak truth, to give, even when you are tired or distracted. Greatness is never the result of sporadic bursts of energy. It is the fruit of discipline applied consistently over time. And it is the same with every area of life. If you are waiting for motivation to carry you, you will remain forever stuck at the level of potential. But if you can anchor your actions in discipline, you will be shocked at how far you can go, not in a week, not in a month, but in years of faithful persistence. So I urge you to reflect on this. Your future will not be decided by how you feel in the moment. It will be decided by whether or not you act regardless of that feeling. Discipline is not glamorous, it is not always exciting, but it is the one force that separates those who dream from those who achieve. And here is the simple, brutal truth. Your life will either be governed by your moods or by your discipline. One leads to chaos, the other to greatness. Choose discipline because mood fades, but discipline endures. If discipline is the foundation of transformation, then the morning is the battlefield where discipline is first tested. The way you greet the morning is not a trivial matter. It is, in fact, the clearest indicator of whether you are in control of your life or whether life is controlling you. Those early hours are not neutral. They are charged with meaning because they set the trajectory for the entire day, and in a broader sense, they set the trajectory for the kind of person you are becoming. When you wake up and immediately reach for your phone, you are already surrendering the battle. Before you have even opened your eyes fully, you are allowing external forces, social media notifications, the chaos of the world to dictate the atmosphere of your mind. In that moment, you have said, I will allow the outside to shape my inner world. But when you rise deliberately, when you order those first hours with intention, you are sending a message to your psyche. I am in command. I decide how this day will begin. Think of it this way: the morning is a rehearsal for the rest of your life. If you can win the first battle, the small victory of getting out of bed at the time you promised yourself, of moving your body, of feeding your mind with something meaningful instead of garbage, then you carry that momentum forward. And momentum, once gained, is an extraordinary ally. One small win leads to another. But the opposite is also true. If you lose the first battle, if you hit snooze, if you crawl through the morning sluggish and distracted, you've already told your brain that compromise is acceptable. And compromise spreads. You compromise once, and the whole day becomes easier to waste. There's a deep psychological reason for this. The brain is constantly looking for signals about who you are. Every small action becomes evidence for your identity. When you rise in the morning and you do what you said you would, you are literally accumulating evidence that you are reliable, disciplined, and intentional. Conversely, when you begin the day by breaking promises to yourself, you send the opposite message: that you cannot trust yourself, that you are weak, that your words mean little. And that identity, whether you realize it or not, begins to shape everything. This is why ancient traditions often placed such weight on the dawn. The early morning has always been regarded as sacred time. It is the quiet hour when the world has not yet imposed its noise, when your thoughts are clearest, when you are most receptive to direction. You might pray, you might journal, you might study. What matters is that you align your soul with order before chaos arrives. And that act alone, the deliberate ordering of your mornings, becomes the seed of wisdom, strength, and focus. Some will say, "But I am not a morning person." And to that I would respond, you don't need to be. The goal is not to adopt some idealized version of another person's routine. The goal is to claim the first waking moments of your day and make them your own. For some, that means rising before the sun. For others, it means creating structure even if you wake later. What matters is not the hour, but the intentionality. The first battle is about self-command, not about competing with someone else's schedule. Consider this practically. If, in the first hour of your day, you accomplished 3 things: you moved your body, you nourished your mind, and you planned your actions, you would already be far ahead of most people. You would step into the day with clarity rather than confusion, with strength rather than weakness. And from that point, every challenge you face is approached with the knowledge that you are already winning. You cannot control everything that happens to you in life. Tragedies occur. Chaos intrudes. The unexpected will always arrive. But you can control how you begin your day. That is within your power, and it is often the only point of control you truly have. When you claim that, you anchor yourself against the storms. You say, even if the world falls apart around me, I will not fall apart inside myself. That is the psychological power of mastering your mornings. So do not take those hours lightly. They are not expendable. They are not meaningless. They are the crucible in which the self is forged day after day. And each morning is another opportunity to either give your life away to chaos or to take it back with order and intention. The battle is always the same every day, the moment you wake. And the truth is simple: if you win the morning, you win the day. If discipline is the foundation and the morning is the battlefield, then what you feed your mind and spirit becomes the fuel that sustains you through the day. Because make no mistake, what you consume shapes who you are becoming. And I don't mean only food. I mean the conversations you have, the books you read, the images you scroll past, the music that fills your ears, the thoughts you allow to repeat inside your head. Every one of those things is nourishment, or it is poison. And over time, they accumulate until they define the quality of your inner world. Most people treat their mind like a garbage dump. They absorb endless streams of noise, social media, clickbait headlines, gossip, cynicism, and then they wonder why they feel restless, anxious, and empty. It is not a mystery. It is cause and effect. If you eat junk food every day, your body decays. If you feed your mind and spirit with junk, your soul decays. It's that simple. Now, there's a principle worth grasping here. The human mind is highly plastic. It reshapes itself according to what it repeatedly encounters. If you surround yourself with shallow, trivial content, your thinking becomes shallow and trivial. If you dwell constantly on outrage, your nervous system becomes addicted to outrage. But the reverse is also true. If you expose yourself to wisdom, truth, and beauty on a daily basis, your soul begins to align with order, meaning, and strength. And over time, those internal structures become your default state. This is why ancient traditions placed such importance on daily rituals of reflection, prayer, and study. They understood that life is a constant battle against entropy, the natural drift toward disorder. And if you are not actively guarding your mind, the world will gladly fill it with chaos. In fact, our culture is designed for that. Companies compete to capture your attention, not to elevate you, but to addict you. They know the more anxious, distracted, and outraged you are, the easier you are to manipulate, which means that the responsibility to protect your inner world falls entirely on you. No one else will do it for you. Ask yourself honestly, what do I allow to take root in my mind each day? If you can't answer that question with intention, then you are already at risk. Because what you allow in will eventually come out. A polluted stream cannot produce clean water, and a polluted mind cannot produce a noble life. You cannot hope to live with courage, wisdom, or strength if the only things you consume are trivialities and noise. Let's consider the alternative. Imagine that instead of reaching for your phone in the first quiet moments of the morning, you read a few pages of a book that challenges you to think deeply. Imagine that instead of drowning your mind in headlines, you sit in silence and reflect on your goals, or pray, or journal, or meditate on something eternal. Imagine that instead of spending hours comparing yourself to others online, you engage with someone face to face, really listening, really connecting. Do you see the difference? You would not just feel better, you would become better. Day by day, those small acts of nourishment would reorient the compass of your life. It's also worth noting that feeding your spirit is not just about avoiding the negative. It's about actively seeking the positive. Wisdom doesn't appear by accident. Strength doesn't emerge by default. You have to pursue them deliberately. That means choosing carefully the voices you listen to, the words you speak, the stories you tell yourself. It means filling your environment with things that remind you of truth and beauty, rather than things that drag you into despair. There is a moral dimension to this as well. If your inner world is filled with resentment, envy, and bitterness, then no matter what success you achieve outwardly, your life will feel hollow. But if your mind is trained on gratitude, courage, and meaning, then even in hardship you will find strength. That's why guarding your inner world is not optional. It is essential. So, I would challenge you to see every choice of attention as an act of self-creation. When you pick up a book, when you choose what conversation to have, when you decide whether to scroll mindlessly or to reflect deliberately, you are not just passing time, you are shaping your soul. And one day, you will look back and realize that who you became was not an accident. It was the sum of what you chose to consume, day after day. Guard your mind like a fortress. Feed your spirit like a garden, because your inner world will either become the wellspring of your strength or the root of your destruction. And the choice is yours, made daily, in what you allow in. There's a truth about change that most people resist, because it's not glamorous and it doesn't flatter our impatience. Real transformation is not the product of sudden leaps, but of small, almost invisible steps repeated over time. This is what I call the compound effect, and it is the silent force that separates those who wish for a better life from those who actually build one. We live in a culture addicted to immediacy. We want results now, recognition now, success now. But life does not work that way. The laws that govern growth are slow, steady, and cumulative. Just as a tree does not become mighty overnight, you do not become disciplined, wise, or successful in a week. It happens little by little, choice by choice, habit by habit. And the irony is that while these actions feel insignificant in the moment, they are shaping the entire architecture of your future. Think of compound interest in finance. If you invest a small sum consistently, it grows not only on the principal, but also on the accumulated growth. Over years, what began as almost nothing becomes enormous. The same principle applies to your habits. One workout won't transform your body, but 1,000 will. Reading one page won't make you wise, but 10 pages a day for 10 years will alter your mind beyond recognition. Speaking one word of kindness won't heal a relationship, but consistent acts of love over decades can create unshakable bonds. Small actions compounded over time are unstoppable. This is why discipline, morning mastery, and feeding your inner world all converge here. Because without persistence, without that long-term accumulation, even the best of intentions collapse. It's not the dramatic decision made in a burst of inspiration that matters most. It's the small, consistent act performed when no one is watching, repeated until it becomes second nature. That is the essence of the compound effect. Psychologically, this principle is profound. Human beings tend to underestimate the long-term consequences of their daily actions because our minds are wired for the immediate. We want to see the results now, and when we don't, we conclude that our effort was meaningless. But reality is mercilessly cumulative. Every thought, every word, every action leaves a trace, and though you may not notice it today, those traces accumulate until one day the difference is undeniable. The tragedy is that most people give up before the effect has time to manifest. They abandon the process because they cannot see the fruit, forgetting that fruit takes seasons to ripen. And here lies the paradox: the compound effect is always working, whether you recognize it or not. If you neglect your body daily, if you feed your mind with triviality, if you live by impulse rather than discipline, those choices compound too. They accumulate into weakness, confusion, despair. Nothing stands still. You are either compounding growth or compounding decay. Every day you are moving, but the question is, in which direction? Now imagine if you truly embrace this principle. Imagine if you committed to just 3 or 4 daily habits, small, simple, consistent. Over time, they would transform not only your circumstances but your identity. You would look back 5 years from now and scarcely recognize the person you once were. And here's the remarkable thing: it wouldn't feel dramatic while you were doing it. It would feel ordinary, boring even. But that is the secret. Extraordinary lives are built on ordinary disciplines repeated faithfully. This should both terrify and inspire you. Terrify you because it means that neglect compounds as surely as effort does. Every wasted day adds up. But inspire you because it means that even the smallest effort, if sustained, becomes unstoppable. You don't need to conquer the world in a day. You only need to win today, and then win tomorrow, and keep winning the small victories until time itself multiplies your efforts. So I leave you with this thought: do not despise the small, consistent actions. They are not insignificant. They are everything. The compound effect is the great equalizer, rewarding the disciplined and punishing the careless without fail. Your life will not be defined by what you do once, but by what you do every day. Small habits, sustained faithfully, will transform you forever.